In 1990, when the Super Nintendo launched in Japan, Capcom's arcade hit Final Fight was one of the launch titles, and Sega felt the need to strike back with a similarly themed beat-em-up of their own. They called it Streets of Rage. Developed by the AM7 division of Sega, one of the main divisions devoted to the Mega Drive, the project was headed by Sega veteran Oriyoshi Oba, who just completed his last project, Revenge of Shinobi. The series started strong in Japan with Bare Knuckle, and soon afterwards made its way to the West as Streets of Rage. The development team turned to Yuzo Koshiro to produce the game's brilliant score, whom they worked with before on Revenge of Shinobi. Inspired by techno and house, he wanted to introduce this musical genre to the video game scene. Yuzo Koshiro sampled the distinctive sound of the Roland keyboard and used it to give the soundtrack its club music foundation. He wrote his own software instead of using Sega's standard audio program and fully utilized both audio chips inside the Mega Drive. Streets of Rage became a cult classic hit for Sega and laid the groundwork for later titles with its tight controls, well-balanced difficulty, and one of the best soundtracks the Mega Drive had to offer. The final chapter in the series was released in 1994, which was pretty late in the console's lifespan. Many players missed out on it during its original release, currently making it one of the more expensive games for the Mega Drive. The series composer took a different approach in this third act, incorporating heavily randomized sequences, which was the latest trend in the techno scene at the time.
The sound effects are mostly fine, they're pretty much exactly how they were in Streets of Rage 2, but the music is horrible! It's still Yuzo Koshiro, but this time around he went more for the experimental kind of thing, and ended up with a lot of noise-based music. And it's terrible. It's like nails on a chalkboard for me. And some people like it. I don't know how, but some people like it. But it's just a bunch of discordant noise that doesn't really fit in with the previous two games at all.
Now, the Streets of Rage 3 soundtrack, I hated it when I first heard it because Streets of Rage 1 and 2, it's this guy Yuzo Koshiro who his name, he always copied his music on title screens. It would show up, copyright Yuzo Koshiro, and he always did really good music. He did ActRaiser, Revenge of Shinobi, the first two Streets of Rages. He's just one of these names I got to know as a teenager of oh man, yeah, that guy, he does cool music. And Streets of Rage 1 and 2 are really good, but they're really 90s dance music, early 90s dance music. You know, they would not be out of place on a Marky Mark album or something. I mean, they're good, but people who are just oh, they're the best, I love them so much, it's all right, but I mean, it's dated as shit, dude. I mean, would you listen to fucking Pump Up the Jam just as readily? Calm down, you fucking video game nerds. Streets of Rage 3, yeah, it had a really weird sound that, just bizarre. To this day, there's just nothing like it. It's based on this Detroit hard techno scene, as the Wikipedia fucking page says. And I checked that out a bit, and you can hear the little sounds, but that's all really minimalist, where this is much more robust. And just, I think it helps to divorce the music from the game. You're playing the game, and it's just a jumble, and it's crazy, and it's hard to focus on. But what I did is, even though initially I was ooh, I don't care for that too much, then, as the internet showed up a few years down the road, I grabbed the soundtrack and I dubbed it to a cassette tape, because there were just these songs here and there, these parts that would get stuck in my head. And I would play the tape at the comic store that I worked, and it's just this weird, fucked up music coming out of these speakers that people are what the fuck, what are you listening to? And I just got to really like it, and now, I mean, it's just such strange music. It just puts you in this weird headspace that I can't find any other music that really does. And there's a very good chance you're just not going to like this. It's really divisive. So, I mean, I've got little clips I found of little people quoting whether they liked or did not like this music. No one's casual about this shit. It's very divisive. But yeah, I don't know, man. As the years have gone on, now it's another fucking 10, 12, whatever years since even the cassette tape dub that I had. And I still just love this. I love this soundtrack. It's so fucking weird. So I'm just going to read a little bit from the wiki page here, just a little background on this soundtrack, and then I'm just going to play the songs with some little clips and shit. Alright, from the Streets of Rage 3 wiki page. Streets of Rage 3's hardcore soundtrack featured influences from Detroit's hard techno scene, Jeff Mills, Robert Hood, etc., who were popular in Tokyo dance clubs at the time. This came out in 94, by the way, this game. It used a random note generator programmed in C++ by Yuzo Koshiro and featured more robotic, hard-driven lines. For the soundtrack to Streets of Rage 3, Koshiro created a new composition method called the Automated Composing System to produce fast-beat, techno-like jungle. It was the most advanced techno technique of the time, incorporating heavily randomized sequences. This resulted in innovative and experimental sounds generated automatically that, according to Koshiro, you ordinarily never could imagine on your own. This method was very rare at the time and has since become popular among techno and trance music producers to get unexpected and odd sounds. As with Streets of Rage 2, the soundtrack features tracks composed by both Koshiro and Motohiro Kawashima. The game's experimental, abrasive, noise-based electronic music received a mixed reception upon release, but has since been considered to be ahead of its time. According to Mean Machines, the music takes some getting used to. Ironically, it predated the trance era that came a short while after its release. The experimental sounds and use of heavily randomized sequences are also considered ahead of its time.
I'm going to stand slightly in defence of the music.
That was my next
in Streets
question.
of Rage
So
3.
this is something, again, that interests me in terms of, do I love the Streets of Rage 1 and 2 soundtracks more because I played them when I was in my early 20s and I have nostalgia and that music was cool at the time? Or is it just that it's better music? I don't know. Dan, you did, another question, did Yuzo Koshiro invent dubstep in the 90s?
He's kind of not far off. There's a lot of genres in 3 that I think sound more relevant now than they would have done at the time. But also he was using this algorithmic composition system for 3. Not for every track. Some of them are still sort of handcrafted and handmade.
Yeah, you can definitely hear the ones that are kind of, the sort of, it's like the equivalent of Bowie doing cut and paste lyrics or whatever, isn't it?
Apparently him and his co-composer would leave the thing running and just go back and pick like little sections that they thought worked and then
so fucking lazy.
Use those as loops. It is, but at the time it was quite a an artistic choice, I think, because Cold Cut were doing much the same thing.
It's like Jackson Pollock of
an artistic reason to go down to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I think it was just that was being used in commercial dance music at the same time, like with Cold Cut and other producers.
Right.
And maybe Koshiro was thinking, I want a piece of that. See, to me, the second game has the best soundtrack. The first is good, but it just doesn't sound as punchy to me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have all the sort of like twinkly sounds maybe going on. Like I say, it's not working on quite as many channels. But the third game nowadays, I can listen to over and over and over again, except for those few tracks that are horrible. There are some that I totally agree. But I just think it's a really forward-thinking set of electronic dance music if you look at the past 15 years since.
Mm.
Interestingly, for its relevancy, I played a track from Streets of Rage 3 at a New Year's Eve thing at the John Peel Arts Centre with people like dancing, and if you'd have told them it was from a like Mega Drive game from 1994, I don't think they would have ever believed you. So I think it can hold up in certain situations.
Wow.
Maybe it's because I'm like really into my electronica, and it's not as maybe commercially led as the other soundtracks, but yeah, I really enjoy it for what it is.
Surprisingly, one new thing we don't care for is the music. Yuzo Koshiro, who composed the kick-ass tracks from Streets of Rage 1 and 2, literally phoned it in on this one. He programmed a computer to compose the music. Why? The music from Streets of Rage 1 and 2 is the best video game music of all time.
I could dissect Streets of Rage 3 all day to call attention to the shortcomings of its genre, from the Xerox bad guys to the very 90s references like a whip-wielding woman named Lorena. But honestly, if you're playing the game, none of that matters because the music is too damn good. Sure, some of the sound effects sound a little on the stock side. I'm fairly certain they're lifted directly from Sonic the Hedgehog, but the actual background music pushed the limits of the Genesis. Composer Yuzo Koshiro, who also created amazing soundtracks for everything from Legacy of the Wizard to Shenmue, actually built an entirely new audio programming language just for this title.
this is the third and final game in the series. The game was, notorious for having awesome gameplay and awesome sound. The soundtracks were excellent. But for some reason, this game kind of took a dive. And, they maintained the good gameplay, the good graphics, but the sound took the worst dive ever. And if you don't know what we mean, well, take a listen.
I admire this game very much. It has some of the most unique, interesting music and art design that I've seen in any video game ever. And check this out, we have a Revenge of Shinobi sound effect coming up. They may have used it in other games too, but I always think of Revenge of Shinobi when I hear that. Anyway, this is my favorite part of the game. I think the overall design, style, music, and use of the Sega Genesis 16-bit hardware here is incredible. Absolutely brilliant. I don't know if this ever won any awards, but it should have won a music award somewhere. I'll give it the Classic Game Room Seal of Music Award Appreciation.
I don't know. It's something about this game. I can't quite put my finger on it. It just doesn't feel as smooth as the second Streets of Rage. I mean, y'all can't deny the fact that the music in this game sounds like shit. I'm sorry. That's just, again, my opinion. I'm sure there's people out there that appreciate this soundtrack, and that's cool. But to me, it makes my fucking ears bleed. I can't stand listening to any of the music in this game. You know, making it all the way up to the construction site, I think it was like stage 5, maybe 6, something like that. All the way up to that point, like every song in the game just pissed me off. It was unbelievable.
one of the main things you notice is the amazing music. I mean, for a Mega Drive, this is brilliant. As a Mega Drive owner, I was always sad when I'd hear SNES music and think of how poor Mega Drive music was in comparison. But this was actually a soundtrack Mega Drive owners could be proud of.